Does the employees you need live in Portugal or India or the Netherlands? Hiring internationally brings international challenges. Remote takes care of payroll, benefits, taxes, and compliance for your whole team all over the world, so you can focus on growing your business.
Welcome back to Running Remote Online. My name is Danny Page. Day 2. What an unbelievable start we have for day 2. A panel focused on diversity, humanity, and remote teams. I just want to welcome in the entire panel all at once, and I'll let you guys take it away. Sahin Boydas, the CEO at Remote Team, Joe Blair, investor at Coda Capital, Dana Loberg, the CEO at Leo AR, Laurel Farrer, the CEO and founder at Distribute Consulting, and Jordyne Blaise, the Associate Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Bluebird Bio. Guys, I can't wait for this. I'm going to get out of the way, and we'll talk to you soon. Sahin, take it away, my friend.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am so thrilled to have this panel because this topic is absolutely so important and so relevant. We are seeing the news nonstop. And now, unfortunately, I think we are still living in a world that we are not very diverse and we are not very inclusive. So I think, but today our soul pick a weird time in the world and everyone is speaking up and saying enough is enough. And I think we start to see a lot of people speaking up and a lot of people want to change the unfairness and the bias. And we need to make the world more diverse and inclusive. So we have great speakers here. So I want to ask, my first question is, everyone can introduce themselves, few minutes, who they are, what they are working on, and how they are related to the diversity and inclusion. And we can start with Joe.
Hi, everybody. Joe Blair here. I'm a principal venture investor at Coda Capital. I got interested in remote work about a year ago through the lens of mobility, and recently hosted a couple of events where some of the people on this panel were speaking. From a diversity point of view, I'm from the New York area. I'm multiracial, Black, white, and Native American. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Dana?
Yes, I'm Dana Loberg. Hi, everybody. I'm the founder of Leo AR. I have a completely remote team. I've had remote workers for 8 years now. And I am like the token female entrepreneur in technology, fundraising in Silicon Valley, where I live today. So I'm definitely a minority here in technology as a female founder. So I have a perspective to give about what that's like and challenges and overcoming them going forward.
Yeah, and I think we can all start Jordyne and Lauren. Yeah, let's start with Jordyne. Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Jordyne Blaise. I work for a biotech company doing diversity and inclusion work, and it's currently in a hybrid platform, and previously worked at a fully distributed company, Articulate. And I have been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work for just over a decade now, focusing on how corporations, companies can be more diverse, more inclusive, and think critically about both their corporate social responsibility framework as it relates to diversity, but also recruitment, hiring, promotion, and retention efforts as well. And I'm passionate about the area and really happy to be here today.
My name is Laurel Farrer. I am the CEO of Distribute Consulting and the founder of the Remote Work Association. And I've been a remote worker for 15 years when I started taking companies from physical to virtual. So the change management process is something that I specialize in as a consultant. And now I'm honored to be a thought leader that collaborates with corporations and governments to solve a myriad of problems, but one of which is how do we leverage the mobility of virtual jobs to take them to minorities? not only gender and race, but also people that live in rural environments, or age or disability, neurodiversity, even discriminatory factors like height can all be eliminated from the workplace by leveraging the tools and operational models of remote jobs. So that's where I am here today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Like, these are unbelievable speakers and panelists. So my first question is, running remote is very global. So there's people here from all over the world, and they are watching what is going on in the United States right now. I would love to ask you guys, like, how would you describe what is going on now, and what will be a great positive outcome from this? And Laura, you can start, and like, I want to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think that Jordyne, I'm sorry, Jordyne. Jordyne is the best person to speak to about what's happening in current events in the news cycle. And so I'll let her speak to that. But ultimately, what we're seeing is a tipping point of, exactly like you said, Sahin, in the green room, of enough is enough, right? Like, we're seeing this, we're moving from a place where we're all uncomfortable about it, and we're all trying to have a voice about this, but not really knowing what to say and how to navigate this, and worried about, offending or putting our jobs at risk. And now we're empowered with action. I can even say, just for me personally, 3 months ago or 2 months ago, when I was invited to speak at events, I had to say, hey, look, I see a lot of white males on the panel. Any chance that we could get other people in here? And it was always like a 50-50 risk of how they were going to respond. But now I'm empowered, honestly, as a speaker, to say, I will not participate until there are people of color and women on this panel. And they say, oh my word, you're absolutely right, we didn't notice. So just like the general consensus, I think, has hit a tipping point, which is such a relief that we can start to see so much more action. Jordyne, what do you think?
I think you're spot on. I think we are certainly at a critical reflection point. I certainly agree that the height of a lot of this sort of resides within the borders of America, but I don't want to understate the sort of global nature of these issues. We can look across Europe, for example, and see racism against people of African descent. We can look across Europe and see anti-Ziganism against Roma people. That has reached a fever pitch for a lot of people in terms of their own physical safety, their interactions with the police, et cetera. And so I certainly don't want to understate the global nature of this issue, and sort of that America sort of sits as a spotlight. But as you've seen, as protests and demonstrations stretch across the globe more and more, that these are issues that exist beyond, the U.S. border, but certainly are critical at this time for us. I think the one bright spot for certain in this area and in this space is a certain sense of urgency that we haven't seen before. As someone with a career in diversity, there's been many closed doors, many slow moving changes, but we've seen in the past couple of weeks alone, companies either pledge money or resources. I'm seeing a number of companies hiring full-time diversity and inclusion specialists or consultants. You're seeing changes in sort of our media and branding. Aunt Jemima, for example, is a perfect current example of branding that has been removed from the shelves almost immediately. And so the one bright spot is there's a sense of urgency and quick moving in this space that we certainly can see potential to grow and extend to the remote space as well.
Yeah, just to add, from the VC perspective, the one thing that I've seen is you have a lot of venture firms coming out and supporting Black Lives Matter, supporting the cause, but also putting some tangible promises out there in terms of, hey, we want to look harder at our portfolio and our diversity metrics. We want to have open office hours for people of color because we want to focus on opening up those opportunities. And my recent tweet storm has been about, that's all great, but I think true change only happens when the decision makers are those people of color. So I think it needs to come further upstream. where LPs, who are the folks that invest in venture firms, have to specifically have their own priorities changed as well. And they've been less, LPs are notoriously like kind of quiet and not out there on social media and whatnot. But I think from what I'm hearing, from people I know in the industry, I think that's starting to change as well. And just recently, there was a $100 million fund announced from Alphabet, Google's parent company, that says they're going to invest in more Black GPs. And I think that's part of what needs to happen. And hopefully it continues to go all the way down the waterfall to continue to make change. So that's what I'm excited about.
Going off of what Joe, I'll just give my perspective as an entrepreneur. So I definitely think it's similar to what he says of like it happening at the top. During the Me Too movement, where it was all about empowering females and giving them more power, it was also about like giving females a fund. It was about giving them board seats. It was like starting at the top, and then it will make, it funnels its way down. So I definitely see a lot of similarities between the Me Too movement that happened about 2-3 years ago and this new minority movement, as far, as just being like beyond aware. It's like actually give your board seat to someone who is a minority, and really to bring, like, extend the diversity, not just to female, but to other minority groups. So it's very interesting. It's definitely complicated. It takes time, obviously. It's not like the Me Too movement happened and then everything improved for women. It was just like there just happened to be a spotlight on it more, and people are getting more aware of it and trying to improve it, which is great. It's a stepping stone. And I'm glad to see that there is kind of what Jordyne was saying. Like, I feel in this movement, there's more extreme, like, what are you doing today to like fix this for your corporation or fix it for your VC? Which is great, because it's like we've been through these. This is like, I feel like there's cycles, and now it's like they're really reactive now, faster, I think, than before.
Oh my God, this was great. So there was a question, so I am pulling it a little bit early because I think it's double downing on Joe's and Dana's and everyone, what they are talking. So we are seeing a lot of movements like Pride Month, Black Lives Matters, Me Too, and what we said, this needs to come from the top. But and everyone here, what if it's not coming from the top? Because top is mostly majority, not the diversity, right? So what do you guys is the best? Like how someone in the company don't feel that the leadership is not taking this seriously. Leadership is not doing anything. How they can communicate their, let's say, unsatisfaction and communicate with the leadership, so the leadership should do something. So everyone here in the audience will probably feel that in the world, and what they can do to communicate that correctly to the leadership. And Jordyne, do you want to start? Yeah.
Sure. I think there are a number of sort of small steps. I think I can't be understated the amount of movements that have happened from the ground level, like from groundswell up, and it frequently does not happen, from the top down. I think you can ask for survey data, right, and say, like, I want to know the perspectives of the employees of color at my job right now. You can ask, and if you have any sort of open forums, you can ask those questions. You can ask for diversity data. What are our numbers? How are we doing? If you're sitting on any recruiting or hiring teams, you can make it your intent to, promote and foster relationships with people of color and invite them. A lot of our jobs that we get are from referrals. So diversifying your network, referring people to your company will inevitably help build that network as well.
I'll just echo what Jordyne so eloquently just said, but I think the takeaway for me is that everybody is at the top of something. You may not be at the top of the company, but you have control over something. So however big or small your little kingdom is, influence change there, and really start the conversation. Make it transparent. Just start talking about it, and don't let it be the elephant in the room, or don't be the one that stays silent when somebody says something inappropriate. Just have influence where you do have influence.
Yeah, I would just say, operate in the sphere of your control, right? So for example, we're hiring someone on our team right now, and not necessarily like wanting to exclude any candidates, but the place I've chose to promote some of these opportunities is within Black VC, for example, which is a VC group for people in the Black community, as well as Latinx VC. And so I think kind of where you promote opportunities and how you communicate that is very important.
Yeah,
And,
I think.
oh my,
You can skip.
Dana, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that, I mean, I hope that everyone always feels the right to speak something that's they're passionate and important about. And I think there's enough support now. If an employee came to me and was like, I'm curious, like why you haven't hired an African American, or I'd like to diversify our team a bit, like they can now use examples that have been shown in media and that are current to kind of support them in like in expressing their feelings or thoughts about diversity and inclusion. So it's a good thing that, like, there are some big people that have given up board seats to include more people on the board. And I think there will continue to be more coming up that people can use as support to not be afraid to speak their mind, is what I'm saying.
Oh my God, that's great. We have very little time left, so I know that Dana, you have some unbelievable stories in Silicon Valley, and I want to at least start with you. And if we have more time, other people can share. Like, can you share something that was really harsh on you, and then how you overcome it?
Sure. Well, there's a couple things. One thing I was reading an article is about how African American men or women feel they have to go to meetings with a white male. And I think that's really interesting because when I first started out, I would take my co-founder to all my meetings because I felt like the guy across the table wanted to see another man, and I thought it would help me in fundraising. And so that was like, I was like, oh my God, I totally relate to that. Like, I definitely brought my co-founder. It wasn't the right choice because 2 people against 1 VC is like terrible conversation because the VC never knows who to look at. And so, but I did the same thing, like just as being a female here, you feel like they're mostly male VCs. And I also had like a pretty bad experience, one of my first VC meetings ever. So, I'm fresh green, like young 20s going into a meeting, and it was summer and it was hot and I was wearing a dress, and like I clearly had just come from New York. So I was kind of like dressed up because in New York City, people like don't wear hoodies and look like they rolled out of bed. So I did dress nice for the VC, and and I had really big investors at that time. I had angel investors like Mark Benioff from Salesforce, the CFO of Disney, to like the president of Warner Brothers. Like I had an insane list of investors, angel investors. And he, like within 5 minutes, kind of looked me up and down, like in a very like not appropriate way. And then was like, how did you get, I just have one question for you. Like, how did you get these massive names to invest in you, And I immediately felt like objectified, like he was insinuating that I slept with them. Like it was just like a very inappropriate situation. I remember I turned beet red. I didn't know how to, like I literally wanted to run from the room. Like didn't know how to, I really wasn't prepared for that. And then later on, I assessed the situation, like maybe I shouldn't have been wearing a dress. I should have been wearing pants so I look more like manly, like I literally like broke down everything that I did wrong to provoke that sort of reaction from the VC. And I changed a lot. Like I immediately went to Target and bought like 20-cent t-shirts and like dressed a little bit more masculine to compensate. And then eventually I learned like how to fundraise more appropriately in the Valley. So it definitely, there's definitely some stereotypical, I would say, judgments and stuff that's just like seated in our culture in general. And I think that's like the hardest part is like, how do we change those innate male, female, race, color, all that stuff that's so embedded in the people, That's my story.
Oh my God. And do you And he's a big VC. I know the name. I'm not gonna say. Is he still like? Do you think it changed a little bit, or do you think they are still doing things like that?
I mean, I think in particular for this VC, he's like a very old man, like 70 years plus. Okay. So it's like, it's not my father's generation that's already kind of sexist, but it's like that grandfather who's like used to the woman in the kitchen, like cooking like organic bread. So I don't think he's going to change because people at that age just don't change. I never even approached any of the other partners about it to like, try to help this man, because I feel like it's impossible. Like maybe they'll, like there's things they did at 500 startups as well to kind of help Dave McClure, and they made rules around who we could have in a room. But like with this senior VC that's so famous, there's no way that they were going to make rules around him. And like, he is the fund. So I'm pretty sure he's the same guy. I don't think he's changed. And I never confronted anyone in the fund about it.
Yeah, but I hope what's happening is they are stepping down, and I hope they will step down like the thing. And Joe, I'm so sorry that I thought we were 5 minutes, but we have a lot of more time. So Joe, do you want to share a great story as well?
Oh man. Yeah, there's a brief story where my first job out of college, I came from New York, Connecticut area, went and moved to North Dakota out of all places to do some engineering work, and I was invited to a kind of work function, bunch of guys playing poker, and we were all hanging out. I'm the only person who's like maybe of color, like I'm a little ambiguous sometimes. And all of a sudden they started playing a song on Winamp that I didn't recognize, but everybody else seemed to recognize, and they were like nodding their head and kind of laughing. And it was this musical artist called Rebel Johnny. And if you're having a good day and you ever want to ruin it, you can go look up this person. But it was the most vile, racist song I'd ever heard. And I was thinking like, wow, these are a bunch of hillbillies. And bear in mind, like, my boss was there. Like there were people I'd worked with or, were senior there, and they all knew the song. They were all laughing. And then I started noticing like people were like kind of staring at me like a little too long. And I'd like look at someone and they'd like look away, and I started sweating, and I started having thoughts you just never want to have, where I'm like, how many of these guys can I take? If I jumped out through that window, could I keep my momentum and keep running? Like I was just having all these crazy thoughts. And then miraculously there was a big like boom, boom, boom on the door, and it opened, and there were like all the girlfriends of the guys, and they came in, and all of a sudden like the music went off and everything went back to normal. And I kind of finished my beer and casually left the party. But that was my big realization that, not every place in the world and not every community is tolerant and is kind of, and even tries to hide it. And again, I want to emphasize this was a work function, right? So that was a big realization for me at that moment in time.
And Lauren, do you want to have something like deep and emotional, made us cry again?
Sahin thinks that my value to the world is that I make people cry, which maybe it is. Well, ironically, I will get a little bit raw here because exactly like Dana was talking about, I have also experienced a lot of discrimination as a woman, of, people going over my head to the man in our team who was my assistant, people waiting for, I arrive in the meeting and they say, we'll wait until a decision maker arrives, like that type of thing. However, that was corporate world. And so I don't know, I think I just went into the corporate world with those expectations. And so for me, it kind of just made this mentality of like, I just need to prove them, and I need to like stand my ground and show like, nope, this is me. And so I got very comfortable with saying, well, I am the decision maker, and kind of, introducing a little sass and shutting them down a little bit. However, the raw, uncomfortable conversation is that I have experienced infinitely more discrimination in the remote work community than I did in the corporate world. And so this is where it gets really interesting is because I am rural, I do not live in New York or Silicon Valley or Portland or Denver or Austin, then I'm perceived as an inferior culture. I am a woman-owned business, I'm a small business, and I'm not tech. And because of all of those things, like I was watching companies with a decade less experience, no credibility, no product, no intellectual property, nothing, get millions of dollars of funding. And I couldn't even get a conversation with a VC or an investor to say, I have something special here. I have information that people need. I have information that's going to change the world. And I'm still blocked. Like, it's still impossible for me to have conversations with people about, like, how can we expand the influence of remote work? And yeah, it's been incredibly difficult. And I'm glad that I had that experience in the corporate world to stand my ground, because since becoming a remote work thought leader, I have had to claw every single day for my credibility, and just fight for it. And you can even see that in my statistics. Like just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm definitely not going to mention names because we were all friends here, right? But my content is research based. It's associated with the largest brands. It's academically supported. Like, I mean, I have proof of everything that comes out of my mouth. And then I was on a panel with somebody else who is notoriously like a mud roller, right? Like they just like to say controversial things in order to get a maximum following on social media, right? Which it's a common strategy. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but we're in this panel and they talked to me, and then they turned to this other guy and they were like, well, you speak the truth, so tell us about your perspective. And I was like, what am I even doing here? Like, and then, yeah, like here's this guy with funding and followers and like all of the things that could give me a voice, and they're saying that he's the icon of truth. So yeah, I think that I'm not trying to like pity myself here, but I'm just saying we have a lot of work to do right here in our community that we think is so open-minded, and we think is like, yeah, we're the solution. We have work to do right here, and we need to make sure that we are can put our money where our mouth is, and that we can not only talk the talk, but walk the walk within our organizations and within our networks as well.
And I can just say, while I don't work in the sort of VC lens, part of this process for me in thinking about the ways in which I'm impacted personally is just that people like me are not in the room, right? And so when we think about sponsorship and mentorship, less than 0.2%, not 2%, but 0.2%, less than 0.2% of all early stage venture funding goes to Black women. And so as I sit here as a Black woman in particular, and we talk about, gender equity, a lot of the gender equity work has benefited white women solely. And so you see women, Black women, Indigenous women, Latinx women, right, left outside of the conversation or the benefit of those initiatives. And even those initiatives are still struggling to get to equity and parity for women, all women writ large, right? And so I think one of the most deeply challenging things is just when it comes to seeing someone who looks like you and kind of aspiring to be a CEO. There are virtually no Black women who are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. When you look at boards, there aren't Black women on boards. And so when I think about my personal experiences where I'll talk to people and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you're brilliant. We love what you're saying. And I'm like, great. And I'm like, invite me, or, I'm not being invited to those rooms, right? I'm not being compensated for my work, or I'm not being invited to the rooms to talk about my expertise, or, this conversation about diversity has reached a fever pitch, but people don't view diversity as a competency. It's like, well, we want to hear from the hedge fund folks. We want to hear from the finance folks. We don't see diversity as a specialty or expertise that can be added to a board or to conversations at that level. And so I think there's that sort of broader layer, but I think more deeply personal is that, a lot of this work comes with great risk. It's interesting to see so many companies say Black Lives Matter, for example, in this year, when 4 years ago that could have been detrimental to your entire career, right? To say that out loud, no one wanted to say it, no one wanted to tweet it, no one was willing to engage it. And to take it a step further, I've been in rooms with decision makers who were, attempting to hire friends and promote them up 3 levels, even though they were white men. And where I pushed back and said, is there a veteran, someone with a disability, a woman of color, a person of color who could fill this role? And I was removed from my position. I either had opportunities taken away from me or was outright let go. And luckily that worked out really well for me in the end. But one of the things I always stress to folks is in this diversity and inclusion work in particular is that it comes with great risk. And sometimes you will be moved out of positions, denied access to rooms. And so where people are in those spaces, I'm thinking about all of these stories and how many of them ended with, I just did my best to get out of that situation. I couldn't say too much, right? Because the other end of that is if I said something that was a little too risque or that was a little too unnerving to the person who heard it, I could have been denied funding. It could have meant the detrimental end of my entire company and life's work. And so I think a lot of this is just around the things that we have to swallow, right? And kind of grin and bear just to have some semblance of success in our respective industries.
Oh gosh. Oh my God. So I don't want to destroy all the other panelists. So I want to take it to a more positive spin. I don't also have a napkin around me. So let's move to the positive. So what I see in the world right now, like I think we are really entering a new kind of democracy. So in the past, majority wins, majority is making the decisions. But I feel right now, not the majority, the group who will include the most diversity, the most inclusive will sort of the win. Maybe I definitely believe something very interesting coming out of the whole movement, because like what we have is not working. That kind of like majority get the vote, they decided. And I think, which is great, you said, like every day now we are seeing a statistic. Like I just saw something on Instagram, there's only 3 people of color in the Fortune 500. What the hell, right? So it's changing. So I want to go to the more positive spin. What is your predictions of this year, and what are the good trends that you guys are seeing that like it will have some great positive income in this year? And what do you guys see as that? And then I think we will finish this great panel, I think. So like if everyone say their last words in a positive manner, it will be great.
All right, I'll just go first really quick. I'm definitely seeing, which I think is very interesting. It's like there's the people with power and then the people that are powerless, right? And I definitely, with the Black Lives Matter, that's very current. Like I'm seeing, they're trying to change the policing. You can't do chokehold in Michigan. Like they're definitely starting to reassess these like old legacy laws that don't apply or make any sense, right? Like if a police guy shoots someone for no reason, they don't go to jail, they don't go to court, they're just like dismissed because they're cops. Like that also like doesn't make sense in this world, because like everyone needs to, there needs to be repercussions for everybody, regardless of your title, regardless of your job. It's like a fair and even world. So I definitely am seeing like what Jordyne was saying, there are like a pretty immediate changes that like people are starting to really reassess these old laws when it comes to like the policing problem that we have, which is just one minor problem in the like whole midst of the whole thing. So I'm definitely positive as far as like, I think, we all realize that, change is good. And there's been a lot of changes with COVID, and like our entire lives have been turned upside down. And we're willing to change now because we've done the worst of it. Like we've all stuck in our bedrooms for 4 months, like with a mask when we go out for 5 minutes. So it's been like, I think that now is a perfect time for us to be thinking deeper about things, because we have more time at home with COVID. And then we've already done these extreme changes environmentally and behaviorally that no one thought we'd ever be working from home globally, right, for 4 months or 5 months, however long it's been. So I definitely have a lot of hope that the timing is right in all this, even though it feels like one thing after another keeps hitting, you know, humans. But like, it's got to all come at this time, because this is when we have these, it's such a poignant, unique experience we're all going through. So I'm very positive that there will be better changes. People will be rethinking everything that we've done over the last like 200 years, and the rules and the laws and things, so that we can govern ourselves better.
Yeah, for me, two positive outcomes. One is, I think that there's pressure, right? And pressure creates kind of attention and focus, right? So whereas diversity might have been like their 10th out of 10th priority, right now in most boardrooms, it's becoming like the number 1 or 2 priority. Is like, okay, what are we doing, about this movement? What are our diversity metrics look like? Do we have someone who's leading up our diversity and inclusion activities here? If we don't, we should hire someone. So, and that pressure of like, we need to have a public facing response to like what we're doing to solve this or address this issue. So I think that's good. And you're seeing that at the startup level, at the Fortune 500 level. And Jordyne talked a little bit about that. The second piece, just bringing this back to remote work, is kind of in parallel to this kind of diversity movement. You have the remote movement, right? And you've got all these giant companies saying we're going to have our employees optionally working remote, like in perpetuity. I fundamentally believe that remote has advantages for all sorts of different diversity metrics, whether it's race, LGBTQ, whether it's things like ageism, like too young, too old. Also things like extroverts. Extroverts happen to usually, get more into the conversation. Maybe they're more willing to speak up. Whereas this is really an opportunity for introverts to come into the fold as well. And as Laurel was saying earlier, it also kind of opens things up geographically. Opportunities aren't just going to be exclusively for people who happen to have grown up in the right city on the coasts. And I think the through line that ties this all together is really just remote work helps it be about the work. It helps you as a manager, I believe, be more objective in how you evaluate the people who are working for you, because it's about their performance. It's less about their personality or how often they can chit chat or joke around with you around the water cooler. It's more about the work. So those are the two positive silver linings I'm seeing out of this right now.
I'm seeing a ton, but I'll be brief and just say I think the most exciting thing is just our imagination. Things that we thought were impossible 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago are becoming possible. Companies that I thought would never be even willing to explore remote are like, yeah, we're going to keep everyone at home now from now on, which expands the landscape for people in rural communities, as Laurel said so eloquently. I think our imagination for even how we frame and think about the world is shifting and changing right before our eyes. And so I think there's nothing more exciting than that.
I completely agree. And I'll just echo both Joe and Jordyne saying that remote work in and of itself is a privilege. We need to recognize that, and we need to say and to be thankful for what we have, and start to share this and help empower the other people that don't have access to workplace flexibility. We need to be able to recognize that diversity has an incredible amount of diversity within it, right? Like it can be age, just like Joe was saying, age, gender, height, location, disability, physical deformity, religion, family status. Like diversity is diversity. And the more that we can move out of this mindset of fear and ignorance and into a place of safety, the sooner that we can get to a place of celebration. And when we get to that point of celebration, that's when we really get to leverage diversity and use it to enhance business operations, use it to diversify and strengthen even political sway in our communities. Like there's so many socioeconomic benefits that can come from a pool of multiple voices. So I'm excited for that future.
Oh my God, thank you everyone. Thank you everyone. These are really good spin. And I want to finish it with something funny maybe. I think like if it changed from the top, right? In every country, we have very weird presidents that's not very inclusive. I think we need to start to change these presidents, starting with the US and the other ones, who is like not very political correct and inclusive. So I think everyone
Well,
has
you
their
run the
vote.
panel. I think you've earned the right to make a
I think so.
to make a
Everyone in
political
their
statement.
country
All
think it
right.
twice. Have a good day, guys. Have a great
Sahin,
day.
thank you so much. And just to
No,
echo what
thanks.
everyone said, the time to create this change is now, right? If you are in leadership in a company, it's not a year from now, a month from now, a week from now, it is today. And thanks to all of you, for your courage, frankly, hearing what you've gone through and for being such important leaders in our space. Thank you so much, guys. Wow, what a panel that was. A really outstanding segue to a female founder coming up next. Sarah Sandness, the co-founder and CTO of Safety Wing, will be giving a talk in just about 10 minutes. Insight into launching a new startup. We're really looking forward to speaking with Sarah and hearing from Sarah. We're going to take a 10-minute break and we'll be right back on Running Remote Online, day 2 of our